Hey again, everyone. Thanks again for joining me on my channel. My name is Ursulon Cockrell. This is It Is Finished Ministries. I have an exciting topic that I want to share with you today, and it's one of the most anticipated, discussed events throughout history and including Christianity, and that is the second coming of Jesus Christ. There are really 3 points that I want to drive home today that are going to make you see this event through an entirely different perspective. It will forever change the way you look at Christianity and how you see yourself and your hope in the future as a Christian. And there's really 3 points. So the first point is that Jesus told us he would come to destroy the vine dressers who corrupted the vineyard in Matthew chapter 21. In Matthew chapter 21, Jesus tells a parable of a landowner who leases out this vineyard to vine dressers. He's drawing off the imagery in Isaiah chapter 5. The vineyard here is the land of Israel, and the vine dressers are the people of Israel who were supposed to take care of this vineyard. And it says that the landowner went away, and he sends his servants to collect the fruits in the season, but actually the vine dressers murder those servants. And so he sends more servants, and the vine dressers murder those servants. In verse 40 of Matthew 23, he says that he sent his son to these vine dressers. And it tells us that the vine dressers actually take the son because they realize this is the heir, and they cast him out of the vineyard and they kill him. Now, obviously, Jesus is referring to himself. He is the son. In verses 41 and on, Jesus goes on to say, what will the landowner do when he comes? Did you catch that? What will the owner of the vineyard do when he comes? And actually, the Pharisees there respond, and they say he will utterly destroy those wicked men and lease out this vineyard to other vine dressers. And then in verse 43, we actually find that the kingdom, he says, will be taken from them and given to another nation bearing forth the fruits in their season. So the question is, and we're going to answer this question, when did this event happen? When did Jesus come and destroy the vine dressers? Hang on to the end of the video. We're going to cover that. Okay, point number 2. Jesus told us in Luke 19 that he would return after receiving the kingdom. In Luke 19, verses 11 and following. And we find that this is actually the same story told through a slightly different perspective. In this story, there is a nobleman who goes into a far country. Jesus is referring to himself as the nobleman. He goes into a far country. He tells his servants, he gets 10 servants, delivers to them 10 minas, and he tells them, occupy till I return. Now we find that his servants, they have citizens, and his citizens say after he leaves, we don't want this man to reign over us. We hate this man. And this is the same thing that the Pharisees also said of Christ. In John 19:15, they said, we have no king but Caesar. They did not want this nobleman to reign over them. We find in verse 15 of Luke 19 that he returned. The nobleman returned after receiving the kingdom. Did you catch that? He returned. Now the question is, when did this happen? Well, we're going to cover that. And we find that after he returns, he calls his servants to take an accounting, if you will say, a judgment perhaps. The first servant was given 1 mina. He actually makes 10 minas, and he's given control over 10 cities. The second servant received also a mina. He turned it into 5 minas. And so Jesus gives him 5 cities. But we find that the last servant, instead of doing anything with this gift that he received, he actually went and hid it in a handkerchief because he says the nobleman was an austere man and he was afraid. And so we find that what Jesus does is he said, take that mina from him and give it to the servant who actually used, the first servant who actually made this 1 mina profitable and turned it into something. We also find that what is the moral of this story? At the end of the parable, he actually tells them in verse 27, that he says, bring me those enemies of mine and let me slay them. So here we're seeing exactly what we saw in Matthew chapter 21, where after he returns, he finds these wicked vine dressers or this wicked servant who did nothing, and he slays both of them. And in doing so, he in the first instance and in the second, he takes the kingdom, you could say, the mina, or the vineyard in this case, and gives it to another nation. So we're looking at the same story, slightly different perspective. And so what is the mina? Well, we find in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 8, when Paul is speaking of Christ, he said, when he ascended on high, he led captivity captive, and he gave gifts to men. So this is the gift, you could say, that was delivered to them. Jesus delivered to them. Well, what did the servant do? We find the third point in Matthew 23, when Jesus actually says, he's giving a long rebuke to the Pharisees and to Israel at that time. And at the end of the chapter, he delivers something profound. He actually tells them that all these things will come upon this generation, and we'll get to what those things are. In verse 15, he tells Israel that they travel land and sea to make one proselyte, one converted person, and then they turn him into a child of the son of hell. So he was saying that they had received these gifts, but they did nothing with it. They took what they had and they actually turned and used that for the enemy. And so we find that he's still talking about this wicked servant. The kingdom is taken from him, given to another nation. And we find later on in Matthew 23 that he is giving a strong rebuke, and he actually tells them, upon you, Israel, Pharisees, Jerusalem of that time, upon you will come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from Abel unto Zechariah the son of Berechiah. And then he goes on in verse 35 and says, assuredly I tell you, all these things shall come upon this generation. And he's referring there to the destruction of Israel as a nation. This event took place in 70 AD, when the Roman armies came in and decimated Jerusalem. So this is the event foretold by Christ in Matthew 21 and in Luke 19. We see this same parable again in Matthew 22. He says that he came and destroyed that city and burnt it with fire. So Jesus said that his return in both of these instances would be to return and destroy those wicked vine dressers. And as we've already stated, when that event took place, this was in 70 AD, when he decimated that kingdom, that city, and he lent the kingdom out to another nation. That would be the remnant of Israel and also the Gentiles. This is when Jesus came, folks. I know it's not what you want to hear, and you may be asking yourself, but what about this verse and this one and this one? Please leave those comments so that I can address them in future videos. If you found this message to be a blessing, please like, comment, and don't forget to share, folks. Many people need to hear this message. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. God bless.